Hello and welcome to another audio analysis. In today's video we'll be taking a look at the track Unfamiliar by the American metalcore band Currents. This is track number 3 on their most recent album The Death We Seek, which has landed today, and it is definitely worth a listen through. This is a really strong album that you need to get yourself listening to. We have seen metal be very expansive, certainly across the course of this year. We've got a lot of bands really pushing the boundaries, and Currents have had a very quick rise over the past 5 or so years. Despite doing many of the things that most other metalcore bands do, with these chugging riffs, these soaring choruses and things like that, there's just something about Currents that have really set them aside from the rest of the pack. They really are a band that have just sharply rose to prominence, and many people can't quite put their finger on what makes them stand out so much, but they've managed to serve up something that's got a lot of tongues wagging within the metal community. So will this latest track sound unfamiliar or close to home? Let's take a look at exactly how it sounds. Already off this first verse, I'm really enjoying just this intro we get with the sweeping guitars, really just showing off a bit of the musicianship, really just setting the tone for what the track is going to bring, and really just showing the creative playfulness of the band members as well in what they're going to be bringing, certainly from the guitars. And I really like this opening lyric, reflections of violent shadows follow me for life. So typically you do see shadows used as this way to kind of show this darker side of somebody. It's used a lot in music, but I like this idea of reflections of violent shadows, because a shadow typically is just a rough shape. A reflection of a shadow tends to be slightly more detailed, so you can almost see who's following you around, as opposed to just this shape, this darkness. It's almost like it's more concise and more clear as to the dark things that are following you around, so I really do like that. And so we can see from this, it's almost like from this position of power, what you want I can't offer even now on this throne. So it's almost like Brian is putting himself in the position of somebody that has power, and we're seeing this idea of this apocalypse almost coming in. Set a course for a new life where each day is another disaster. So it's definitely talking about the future going forward. Now we're forced to reveal it for ourselves. So each day is new territory. It's unfamiliar ground. So we can certainly see from the opening verse where this track is going to go. Wow, this is really quite a strong track. I love some of these lyrics we've got coming on. It's not hard to get lost on a path so unfamiliar. So every day is a path that's unfamiliar. These different ways you can break down this track. You can look at it from a personal point of view, where maybe you make a change in your life. You kind of go down this path that's unexpected, that feels unfamiliar, a path that we're almost all set to walk. So this idea of fate may be coming in, and it can be the global application or a personal application. There's two ways of taking this track, which is great. Save a life at what cost? So again, touching on the idea of the apocalypse with that lyric, we're on a track that we've all forgotten. So a lot of people just kind of go on blindly without kind of considering the future. So we're seeing lots of different things being really pulled in just on that pre-chorus, just really those two lines pulling lots of ideas together and really opening it to interpretation. And I also like how we've got the pendulum in the visuals that mixes in with this idea of we're counting down. It's something you saw in tracks such as Linkin Park, where watch time count down as the pendulum swings. So you can see that being used almost reflectively in this idea that we're counting down to the apocalypse, to a point of disaster. The further we descend, we tangle the web. It's almost like we've got this very dystopian future coming our way, compounding our torn existence. So the fact that the world is just effectively going to shit almost, that's the way they're kind of looking at it, sick and twisted, drowning in darkened thoughts of a life we're born to squander. This idea that if we don't change things, if we stay on the same track, it's going to result in disaster. So really putting a lot of emphasis on this kind of global apocalypse almost that they're trying to bring in. And that last lyric really hits hard. Slow now, the hate sets on like a father scorns desponded son. So this idea of disassociation, people kind of disassociating from each other because of violence and things like that. So there's lots of graphic ideas being brought in, lots of focus on the apocalypse, but it still has that twist where you can look at it of being on a personal unfamiliar track where you're not really sure which way you're going. You can occasionally feel a little bit lost. So, and one thing I want to touch on is just the power of Brian Wiley's vocals. I mean, you see from the opening verses, we have these much softer tones, and then he just goes into something much heavier. And I think him as a vocalist as being sort of the driving force behind what sets Currents apart. He's able to switch into so many vocal styles so effortlessly, and it also allows the band to really kind of have a reach out to different sides of metalcore. This is a sort of song that fits in with those people that want those heavier guitarists, those really strong elements, and those slightly heavier vocals, but also those people that prefer that lighter side of metalcore, where it has that slightly softer touch. So it really pulls and encompasses all fans of metal into one track, and that's what most of their music has done. And I feel like that a lot of that comes down to Brian and his ability to just really interchange his voice. But even instrumentally, we see so many strong elements being brought in, these really chugging, sweeping guitar riffs, these pounding drums, and you've got to appreciate how well this track is actually mixed, because with all these elements being brought in, there isn't one thing towering over the rest. It's been mixed very, very well, to the point where every instrument, if you focus on it, stands out very clearly, but they don't override each other. They don't get in each other's way. They're working in perfect harmony, which helps to make this such a strong track. And I love how with these backing vocals, we've seen this kind of development as the track has gone on. It started out before with complacency, then it moves on to extinction. So swapping these words out, showing this idea that if we're complacent and we don't change things, that will result in our extinction. So again, putting emphasis on this idea of apocalypse, and really kind of showing a story, a bit of a build-up, the idea of where you're currently at now and what will come if we don't change our ways and we stay on this track. And it is difficult when you're going into unfamiliar territory, but sometimes you've kind of got to explore that, because you don't know what the result may be. Okay, I love that last verse. I love that line. We were in control, but it's not the way it works. So again, touching on this idea of maybe people in power think they are in control, but ultimately Mother Earth has the ultimate power. It could wipe us out in an instant. The cosmos could just destroy the Earth almost instantaneously. So we don't have that control. We've got to kind of control the things that we can in the hope that we don't kind of see this dissolution of the world. What certainly is a very, very strong track. Just you can just see from the vocals, the guitars, just everything fits so beautifully together, and it really has this strong meaning behind it, this apocalyptical idea, and you really have this first person perspective from almost like somebody in power. I quite like how Brian puts himself in that position, and really has that inclusiveness as well, that global appeal, just to kind of pull everybody together, so that we think we're all in control, but actually in reality we've just got to make these changes going forward to stop the apocalypse happening. So covers a very important topic, and really just is a great track on the album. If you haven't heard The Death We Seek, we really need to give it a listen. It did just land today, so really, really strong album. Great to see just more strong metalcore albums being released, and I think Currents are certainly going to continue their upward trend with more tracks like this that really just show their proficiency and just the real strength of the band as a whole. I do also like the way that you can kind of branch off with the actual meaning. Although it has that apocalyptical idea, I like how you can take that personal effect from it. We all walk a path that's unfamiliar. Like I say, it's that change of something in your life, that big change. We're always walking into something new, and sometimes change can be unfamiliar. It can be scary, but I like how the song gives off that idea as well. You can kind of branch off to that sub-meaning, so really just keeping the song a bit open, and even though it has that global, because we're all people that have to go along these unfamiliar tracks, and really just as we go into the future, every day is a journey into the unknown. So that will be everything for today's video, but as always, feel free to let me know your thoughts about this track in the comments section below, and definitely check out the band's most recent album. As I say, it did only drop today, The Death We Seek, and it's certainly going to be a contender probably for album of the year. It's definitely, in terms of the metalcore scene, we're seeing some strong albums, and this is another one to add to that list. So if you have already heard the album, then feel free to let me know your thoughts on that as well. And as always, if you would like to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next Arjo analysis.